They're fluking a lot.
Yeah.
They just came up and that one fluked, which is not often, we don't often see that, but they do what they want to do. They can't sleep like we do, otherwise they wouldn't know when to come up to the surface to get a breath of air. So how they're able to get enough rest to survive and still know when to come up to the surface is they're able to shut half their brain down at a time. You can tell which side is sleeping because the opposite eye will close. Scientists believe they get about 4 to 8 hours a day, probably not all at the same time, but somehow this technique gives them enough rest to survive. And that goes for all cetacean. They hydrate the same way, they give birth the same way, they will sleep the same way. Now once in a while we're fortunate enough to see these guys do something other than swimming, but most of the time that's what their mission is in this area, is to swim down to Mexico or swim up to Alaska. Sometimes they will breach, almost come out of the water completely, some of them, about 2/3 most of the time. Ideally landing on their back. They don't have a sternum, so if they did a big belly flop, they would probably bare minimum knock the wind out of themselves. So that's why you see whales spin in the air, gray whale or humpbacks, because they're trying to land on their back. I often see gray whales breaching